So welcome everyone to our Sunday morning meditation class. I'm Hugh Byrne and I teach with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, IMCW. I've been teaching with IMCW since 2003 and teaching before that since about 2000. And I had a regular Sunday class, all that time. And we've now kind of adapted it somewhat. I'm not teaching every week, but normally, currently, the first and third weeks, some variability, and other teachers from our community and some guest teachers coming in the other Sundays, and this is hosted by IMCW, kind of is the mothership, as it were, and within IMCW we have a kind of sub-community called the Center for Mindful Living. Many of you know, and many of you are very active participants in CML, Center for Mindful Living. It was a physical space in Tenleytown for probably 10, 11 years, but with COVID, we had to give up the physical space. But through amazing organizing from people like Sharon, Shazzy, and Joe, and Jean, and others of us, it transformed into a mainly virtual community, and we are doing more stuff in person as well now. But really vibrant, with both lots of meditations offered and classes offered, but also, as many of you know, lots of Sangha-led offerings. Whether it was poetry evening or storytelling or mindful gardening, a whole range of wonderful offerings, and a real, amazing community has developed. So if you're new and joining us for the first time or the second time, know that you're very warmly welcomed. Everyone is welcome. And that this is really an amazing community. And it's kind of I'm not going to talk a lot about it now, but you're kind of probably, if you're on the mailing list, you'll be getting some information in the next week or so about kind of the new developments, kind of talking about it moving from 2.0 to 3.0 in the kind of computer internet language, to a kind of new kind of more expanded vision, really. So we'll be in touch around that. And also, speaking about larger community IMCW, as some of you know, but maybe not everyone, IMCW has purchased a wonderful retreat space in Madison, Virginia. It's about an hour and a half from the DC metro area, give or take 2 or 3 hours, depending on traffic. So, if you're no traffic, it's probably 90 minutes from the Beltway, and with traffic, it could be 3 hours on a Friday evening. So, you'll probably, if you haven't heard about that, you'll probably be hearing a lot more about it. I was really happy to be part of the first Insight Meditation Community of Washington retreat there. We've done lots of retreats there under the old management of Pathworks, wonderful community that stewarded the space for 50 years. And it's just an amazing space, center. But this was the first retreat under IMCW's, new ownership, which is kind of hopefully expanding a whole new period. And as some of you may know, it's not easy to find retreat space, that's accessible and, reasonably priced, etc. within the DC area. We've been struggling with that for probably 20, 25 years. So that's wonderful. As I'm talking about retreats, I want to just share a little story, it's about how going on retreats could save your life. So it's an encouragement to go on retreats. Author unknown. This was shared by Luisa Montero, who also taught the retreat with Rebecca and me this last week. 1. Avoid riding in automobiles because they're responsible for 20% of all fatal accidents. 2, do not stay home because 17% of all accidents occur in the home. 3, this is tongue-in-cheek, obviously. 3, avoid walking on streets or sidewalks because 14% of all accidents occur to pedestrians. 4, avoid travelling by air, rail, or water because 16% of all accidents involve these forms of transportation. And 5, of the remaining 33%, 32% of all deaths occur in hospitals. So above all else, avoid hospitals. But you will be pleased to learn that only 0.001% of all deaths occur in retreat centres and these are usually related to previous physical disorders. Therefore, logic tells us that the safest place for you to be at any given point in time is your local retreat centre. And studying the Dharma is safe too. The percentage of deaths during Dharma study is even less. So, for safety's sake, visit your local retreat centre often and be sure to study the Dharma. It could save your life. All right. So a little light-hearted humour. Encourage you to. You're already here, so we're practicing the Dharma together. So hopefully this is a very safe space in more ways than one. And so, anyway, with that, welcome everyone. It's great to be with you. Great to be together. What I just share a little bit about the format, where we normally begin with a period of meditation, about 15, 20-minute meditation, and then we have I'll share a talk. And the theme I'd like to focus on today is equanimity, and particularly equanimity in difficult times. Seems like we've been living in difficult times for quite a long time, in many ways, from the global to the kind of the more local, and in obviously our own lives. And being human is brings its share of difficulties and challenges. So I want to talk about this quality of equanimity today, and hopefully I want to do that and leave time for for some sharing after that. And we'll finish the class today at 12. And typically if people like to stay around and to just be in contact more informally, we can normally keep the room open for that time as well. But then if you have to, if you need to leave at 12, then that's great. So both those options are there. And just good to just welcome Maureen, who was on retreat with us. Great to see you, one of our regulars. So welcome everyone. So we will we'll take time to sit together to begin. So I invite you to just come into a posture that's comfortable, relaxed. So you're sitting with your back straight. If you're more comfortable lying down, that's fine. It's a perfectly fine posture to sit in or meditate in. Maybe invite the shoulders to relax. Close your eyes if that's comfortable. Let your attention come inward. You might consciously drop out of the kind of the thinking mode, the doing mode, and just let yourself be here. Let yourself arrive. Feeling the body, feeling the contact of your body with the chair or the cushion or whatever you're in contact with. Feel the pressure. maybe warmth, coolness. Just staying close to your direct bodily sensations. And you might find it helpful to take a few longer, deeper breaths as a way to help you arrive and settle. Take a nice full deep in breath, filling the chest, filling the lungs. Just hold it briefly and then release, long, slow out breath. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. Just letting the breath help you settle if that's possible right now. And just being aware of your experience, meeting this moment just as it is, whatever you're aware of. So if you can just let the feelings, let the sensations, emotions, thoughts, just let them come and go without pushing away, without resisting. Just being here. Some other very simple gestures that can help you, maybe be able to help you settle. One is to just consciously invite a smile or a half smile to the corners of your eyes and corners of your mouth. You know, if it helps to think of someone who easily makes you feel happy or joyful, or somewhere that you feel at ease and calm and happy. And just you can use that as a kind of doorway to really arriving and settling. You might let the smile be the expression of how you want to meet whatever's present. See if you can meet it with an expression, an attitude of a smile. Can you smile into the more difficult feelings as well as the more pleasant or easy ones? It can also help to put a hand on your heart, maybe the other hand on your belly, whatever feels right for you right now. Just feeling this contact with yourself, a gesture of kindness, care towards yourself. Just breathing in and out and caring for this life, this being that's yourself. And as you're settling into being here, meeting whatever is present with acceptance, with kindness. I'll share this poem by Martha Postlethwaite, her poem Clearing. He says, "Do not try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is yours alone to sing falls into your open, cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue." So you might think of this time of meditation, this time of being together as like a clearing, creating a space in the dense forest of your life, in the busyness, amidst all the obligations and to-dos, and just carving out this space where you can be really present for your experience, for whatever is here. And then out of that presence may come some clarity, some insight, some kindness, with which we can go back into our lives and into the world, perhaps with a different, kinder, clearer sensibility and attitude. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. So the invitation is to meet whatever is arising in the body and in the heart and in the mind with acceptance, with kindness, just letting what is here, letting it come, letting it be, and letting it go. If it helps to kind of ground and stabilize your attention, you can just let your awareness rest on the breath, the experience of breathing in and out. And the breath can be a kind of anchor for your awareness, kind of grounding you. Just simple awareness of breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in, knowing you're breathing in. And breathing out, knowing you're breathing out. And then when the mind moves into thought and you become aware of that. Maybe you've been lost for a while in plans or memories or daydreams or worries. You can just gently and kindly let your attention come back to the body and the breath. Here, now, just coming home. No problem when the mind goes off. It's just, the habit energy of mind we've built up in our own ways over time. Some of us go into worries, and some to planning, and some to daydreams, and different things at different times. We can always just come back, just gently, kindly, come back to the body and the breath. Just to see if you can invite the willingness to include everything in your meditation. So nothing's outside, nothing's wrong or an aberration. Everything can be included. Even something that doesn't feel very pleasant, fearful thought or an angry feeling or thought that comes up. You might kind of doesn't feel like you like that. Just let that come and let it go. Thoughts aren't a problem. We can make them into a problem if we get stuck in them, or we wrestle with them, or we try and get rid of them. But if we can just be aware of them, be aware of everything, and just see their coming and going. Maybe we don't always see their coming, but we see they've arrived and can open to them and let them go. We're going to be reflecting on equanimity, and much of our practice of mindfulness has a quality of equanimity to it. Just when we say yes to whatever comes up, this is really an expression of balance in the face of the ups and downs, the pleasant, the unpleasant. I'll just share some phrases of inviting this quality of equanimity. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I calm my mind. May I be balanced. May I be at peace. May I learn to see the arising and passing of all things with equanimity and balance. May I be open and balanced and peaceful. So you might breathe in these reflections, these aspirations. May I learn to see the arising and passing of all things with equanimity and balance. May I learn to see the arising and passing of all things with equanimity and balance. May I be open and balanced and peaceful. May I be open and balanced and peaceful. May I learn to see the arising and passing of all things with equanimity and balance. May I be open and balanced and peaceful. We'll finish with this poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. I live my life in widening circles. I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it. I circle around God, around the primordial tower. I've been circling for thousands of years, and I still don't know. Am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song? Am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song? So take your time coming out, opening your eyes if they're closed, coming back into the group. Just maybe take a minute for a stretch before we move into the talk and the sharing. And please, if you'd like to share in the chat anything that you notice coming up for you in the meditation, anything that was enlightening or challenging, or anything you'd like to share, and welcome anyone who may have joined us during the meditation. So, what I would like to share some reflections on today is the theme of equanimity. You may have noticed that we're living in some challenging times. Maybe it's just me, but anyway, that it's not. I think for many, it's not an easy time. There's so many things we could point to, and I'm not going to get into the details of them, but just kind of recognizing that, whether it's the biggest picture of climate change and what, all the changes we're already seeing, and how things look likely to unfold or already unfolding in very significant ways, down to the divisions and the conflicts both in the world and in the country, and where we stand in relation to all of that, and as well as just the realities of our own lives. We're all getting older. However young we are, we're getting older, and dealing with life's realities, life's challenges. In the Buddhist teachings, a legendary that kind of teaching about the four heavenly messengers. Three of them are sickness, aging, and death, and those are realities we have to deal with. Maybe it might be of parents, and maybe more and more for ourselves. We're kind of working with the realities of this being human, the human condition, and lots comes up, lots come up, lots of things come up. Difficult emotions. We might, just naming a few. We might maybe angry about what we see happening in the world. We see people suffering and harm being caused, and and we might that may for many of us kind of manifest as really anger, sometimes rage, and these can be difficult. That can be a difficult emotion to deal with. How do we work with that? Fear may come up. What's going to happen? Maybe around climate crisis, around elections, around the state of the world more generally, but also in our own lives. And this can manifest as anxiety, worry, stress, all these ways that we can get caught up in painful emotions. That we may experience grief, pain at the suffering that people are experiencing. We may be dealing with grief and pain in our own lives as well. We can be caught up in, maybe a sense of powerlessness, sometimes even despair or overwhelm. It can be a lot that we're working with and dealing with in our lives. And in the face of these challenges, all these challenges, and you may have your own version, your own expression. We're kind of all unique in how we live in the world, and our experiences and our histories. But there is something, I think, of a shared reality of a particularly challenging time, I think. But recognizing as well that there have been earlier times in history that have also been very difficult and very painful. My parents grew up in World War II, and that was a huge conflagration. And, my dad, flew planes over Europe, and, you probably have family members. And, so earlier generations have, experienced difficulties, which is can be a certain solace. But just all this to say, I think we're working with a lot, what the Zorba the Greek called the full catastrophe, the full catastrophe, the whole enchilada, it can be a lot. And I think in the face of the realities of life, one of the most powerful qualities that we can cultivate is the quality of equanimity. Quality of equanimity. In the word equanimity, from the Latin, it means of an equal mind, and that's basically captures the sense of equanimity, that we can meet the ups and downs of life with a sense of an equal mind, with a balanced mind, not getting thrown over, by excitement at the pleasant things and despondency at the more unpleasant ones. That we can hold our experience and hold life with a certain evenness. And what's really important to say, I think, really from the outset, is that equanimity is like other qualities that we can cultivate in meditation. It's not just a given. We either have this quality of equanimity or we don't, or we just have a quality of compassion or we don't, or loving kindness. We may have more natural expression of those qualities, but these are qualities that we can cultivate. That's kind of the point I really want to emphasize, that we can train ourselves, just as we can train ourselves in self-compassion. We can become kinder to ourselves. We may be at a certain point, we might be really quite harsh on ourselves. We might be like, oh, I'm so this, I'm so that, and beat ourselves up and be super critical. But with training and with practice, we can kind of incline the mind much more towards kindness. We can invite kindness. Anything we do, often enough, we tend to become. So the more we practice kindness, the kinder we become. The more we practice generosity, the more we practice self-compassion, the more compassionate we tend to become. The more we practice equanimity, seeing experiences of like, oh, this is difficult, and I can be with this. The more we practice in this way, the more we're able to see, as in the meditation, the arising and the passing of all things with equanimity and balance. It's a training of the heart and the mind to do this. So I just want to kind of start really with that emphasis. It's a quality that is a central one, I think, in our practice and in our lives, and it's one that we can cultivate. So, what is equanimity, and how can it support us in our practice, in training the mind and the heart? You could say that equanimity is a kind of an evenness, a steadiness, a balance of mind in the face of changes, in the face of the ups and downs of life. Here's a quote from the Buddha, some of the earliest Buddhist teachings. Just as a rocky mountain is not moved by storms, so sights, sounds, tastes, smells, contacts, and ideas, whether desirable or undesirable, will never stir one of a steady nature whose mind is firm and free. So the comparison, is to, and often is used, is to a mountain. The mountain endures rain and hail and sleet and snow and sun and the whole range of different meteorological events, weather patterns, even earthquakes, tornadoes. And yet the mountain remains steady, firm, grounded. And this is, I think, is a lovely metaphor for an equanimous mind. An equanimous mind, a balanced, steady mind, is one that these things come along and they affect us all. Just as, the mountain is affected by these different weather systems passing through, but it remains firm in the midst of it. And that really is the quality of equanimity, of this steadiness in the midst of life's changes, the ups and downs of life. There's another, this is from the early Buddhist tradition. There's a collection of poetry that Buddhist nuns, mainly poems of awakening, Buddhist nuns who had kind of experienced awakening or enlightenment, called the Therigatha, Therigatha. And this one is, if your mind becomes firm like a rock and no longer shakes, in a world where everything is shaking. So your mind no longer shakes in a world where everything is shaking. Your mind will be your greatest friend, and suffering will not come your way. Your mind will become your greatest friend, and suffering will not come your way. Any of us who've experienced, some kind of strong periods of anxiety or worry or fear, I think the thing we'll note, and probably all of us in our life have experienced something like that at some time or maybe different times. In those times, it feels like our mind isn't our friend. Do you know what I mean? That it feels like our mind has a mind of its own, like it's caught up in fear. And there may be a kind of wisdom that's there, that kind of knows it, but can't really access it at those times. It's like we're swept up in those states of mind. Fear is a very good example of that, where fear, it's like you get grabbed like a, kind of like almost like a tornado and kind of swept up. It can feel like that we're not really, it's like our thoughts can be in the driver's seat. Our thoughts, our fears, our emotions. Think about something like road rage, where somebody's caught up in that. They've lost really all control over, they're not operating from a place of deliberation or wisdom or awareness. They're just kind of, the mind is like, and that's kind of how the mind can be. And it's not always as extreme as that, obviously, but a lot of the time we can be swept up in the mind. So that image of the mind being our greatest friend, it's kind of, I find that a beautiful image. And suffering will not come your way. So equanimity has a very central role in the Buddha's teachings. The word in the Pali language, the first written language of the Buddha's teachings, written down about 500 years after his death, is upekkha, Upekkha, upekkha. And it is really a steadiness in the face of life's 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. The Taoists, it's a lot in common, Taoism and Buddhism. The Taoists speak about life's 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows that we'll experience. Hopefully, we'll experience the joys and the sorrows. And it's just kind of how life is. And obviously, some for different reasons of habit, conditioning, choices, karma, may seem to get more of the sad end and others more of the joyful end, but they're really just part of what comes with this being human. We will have joy. I mean, if we're not kind of, in just completely, destitute circumstances, and even in those circumstances, people can find those kind of moments of joy. People in a hospital or a prison who, can just see maybe a kind of a glimmer of light or a little bit of a tree out in the distance, and people being able to find kind of the solace in that. So, there's always that capacity to choose how we meet our experience, as I talked about at many other times. So equanimity is the capacity to not be swept up in the changing conditions of life. Equanimity is one of, just to kind of express or demonstrate how important it is in the Buddhist teachings. It's the fourth of the Buddha's heart practices, what are known as the Brahma Viharas, or Brahma Viharas meaning divine abodes, these beautiful qualities of heart, loving kindness, compassion, joy, often called appreciative joy. And the fourth is equanimity. It's this very central quality, heart quality that we can cultivate, that we can develop. And one of the roles that equanimity plays within these heart practices, along with loving kindness, compassion, and joy, is it helps to balance these qualities. So, as you I think are aware, these qualities in their developed form are really a quality really of friendliness and kindness to all beings. So it's not like exclusive. It's not like, oh, I can be kind to you, but I won't be kind to them because they're bad people or they're the other or whatever. The whole essence of these heart qualities is they are non-discriminating. They include the politician that you might feel a lot of antagonism towards. Nonetheless, we keep our heart open. We don't necessarily start with that person if they create a lot of, aversion in us, but we can train our hearts in that direction, both of loving kindness and compassion and joy. And one of the roles that equanimity plays is to help balance these. So if our loving kindness isn't truly grounded, it can morph into something that's not truly loving kindness. So, it could morph into attachment. We kind of like feeling loving towards everybody, but there's a certain kind of way that we kind of think, well, maybe to this person, I'm wanting something from it. There's a kind of clinging that comes with it, or an attachment. And so, in a way, every wholesome quality potentially has a shadow side to it, that if we're not aware or conscious, it could kind of flip over into that direction. That's why we need to develop these qualities so that they are truly non-discriminatory, non-preferential, that they include everybody, that they're not yes you but no you, they're not that, they're not kind of separating in that way. And what equanimity does is it keeps things in balance. prevents loving kindness from turning into attachment, like, oh, but I want this, I want something from that person, or I want, something from this situation. It prevents compassion from turning into pity. Compassion, with compassion, we're on the same level. I'm not up here and you're down here, or vice versa. We're kind of like, it's just humanity. It's caring about suffering. It's caring about suffering, whoever's suffering it is. So it's not like, oh, your suffering is important and yours isn't. It's like it has that universal quality to it. But if we're not aware enough, if we're not present enough, that quality of compassion could turn into pity. It could be like, oh, I'm up here and I'm doing this for you. And there's kind of, I'm up, there's that hierarchy, higher and lower. Or we could be turn it around. I could be lower and, it could be that way. But whenever there's that hierarchy, that's not true compassion. It could turn into pity. It could turn into being overwhelmed. If we're compassionate, we care about the suffering. But if we're not aware enough, we could take in the suffering of somebody else as though it were our own. And we need to have boundaries in order to be able to, to be kind and to be helpful. Just like getting on a plane and putting on your own mask first before assisting others. You need to take care of yourself. You need to have those boundaries. And yet the heart can be completely open to somebody else and their suffering. But but it's not like in an unskillful way. It's not in a way that because if it is, then we will get overwhelmed and we won't be effective in really being supportive to others who are suffering. So, and with joy, it prevents equanimity, prevents joy from becoming over exuberant. So, and equanimity, itself has a near enemy. This is kind of a little to the side, but sometimes equanimity can look like indifference. We're like there's a kind of not caring, and that's not true equanimity. Equanimity is truly caring, and if it has some sense of whatever, it's like nothing matters or kind of a nihilistic kind of approach. That's not equanimity. Equanimity is to keep one's heart open in a wise and insightful, clear way. There's a line from T.S. Eliot that I love from his poem, I think it's from Ash Wednesday. He says, teach us to care and not to care. Teach us to sit still. I think for that, teach us to care and not to care. Teach us to sit still. And I think of that, I think what he's getting at is we need to care. We need to keep our heart open, but not to care in a kind of clinging way. So having that balance, care and not to care. Teach us to sit still. And then, some of you, probably many of you are aware of the serenity prayer. Grant me, whoever you might be addressing it to, God or some other being or whatever, the Dharma, the world. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So the serenity to accept what I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that, I think that really is an expression of equanimity, that we're accepting that we can't change. When we can't change everything or something, we accept it. But we're engaged as well. We care and we change what we can change. And then the wisdom to know the difference. And equanimity really is grounded in wisdom. And I may come back to that a little bit in a minute. So, as well as being one of these 4 central heart qualities, equanimity is also the culminating quality in another list. And I know for many, the Buddhist lists might seem like, just a kind of shopping list, the 7 of these and the 5 of these and the 6 of these. They actually do, once you could get into them, they provide this scaffolding to help us kind of understand the different qualities, hindrances, and, these 7 qualities are called factors of awakening. And they're qualities that are really essential to nurture and develop if we want to wake up and find freedom in our lives, complete freedom in our lives. We need to cultivate these 7 qualities. And the 7th one is equanimity. And I'm not going to obviously talk about all of them today because I want to move in the next few minutes towards kind of closing up. But I'll just name them, and I'll put them in the chat, or somebody can. The first one is, and one way of looking at these 7 qualities is, they can be looked at just kind of somewhat independent of each other. They can also be looked at in a developmental way, and I'll just mention them in a developmental way. The first is mindfulness, which we're very familiar with. This is this current present moment awareness, opening to our experience as it is. That when we deepen into mindfulness, then a quality that arises out of that is this quality of investigation, of curiosity, of interest. That expression goes, where attention goes, energy flows, something like that. That with attention comes energy. But first, investigation, this quality of interest, investigation, which is the second of these qualities. And as we become more interested, energy does flow. We become more, energy arises, we become curious, we become more interested, the mind becomes more engaged. And that's the third one, energy. And then as the mind becomes more engaged and energized, what naturally can arise is joy. This kind of, and it can take many different forms, but it can be a sense of very pleasant kind of mental state. It can come up. It can sometimes come up as rapture, just a sense of warmth and kind of bubbliness at times, but joy arising out of that energy. And then as the joy settles, that's the fourth one, is joy. And the fifth one is what happens is that what arises is a sense of kind of deeper calm and tranquility. This is awakening factors. Mind becomes very calm, very tranquil. And then as the mind becomes more calm and tranquil, the fifth of the qualities, then the mind becomes more concentrated. It becomes more focused, kind of becomes more gathered. And this is the sixth quality of concentration. And the concentrated mind, which is very, very grounded and focused and one-pointed, if you like, is able to meet, so sixth quality is concentration. And the mind is grounded. When the mind is grounded, then what naturally arises is this steadiness, this balance, which we call equanimity. So equanimity is actually the seventh factor of these seven qualities of awakening, 7 factors of awakening. And the Buddha said about these qualities, he says, just as a river inclines towards the ocean, kind of moves towards the ocean, so these awakening factors incline towards awakening, incline towards enlightenment. That the more we cultivate these qualities, the more we put ourselves in the place of really seeing things as they really are, and waking up to the truth of who we are. So this is so equanimity really has this very central role in some of the most important of the Buddha's teachings. And And it's equanimity is really grounded in wisdom, in seeing things clearly. Because when we're equanimous, when we're able to accept that things change, that everything changes, that pleasant things come along, that unpleasant things come along. When we know that this is just the way life is, rather than, oh my God, why did this terrible thing happen to me? Where the mind can easily go. Instead of seeing that, say, oh, this is how life is unfolding. There are joys, there are sorrows, there are pains, there are pleasures. When we see that, when we're grounded in that awareness that this is the way life is, then equanimity naturally arises. It's natural. Equanimity is a natural expression of this clearly seeing that life, that nothing can be held on to, that everything is always changing, and finding a peace in the midst of this. And I want to finish up by just mentioning of an important teaching of the Buddha on this quality of equanimity. It's called the Loka Vipatti Sutta. It translates as the failings of the world, just the kind of, or the way the world is. And in this teaching, the Buddha says, it begins, monks or practitioners. He's talking about 8 worldly conditions. He says these 8 worldly conditions spin after the world, and the world spins after these 8 worldly conditions. So the kind of basically saying these are the qualities that come with being alive, being human. And he says which 8, and then he delineates them. They sometimes have some slightly different names, but they're basically pain and pleasure. They're these pairs: pain and pleasure, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and disrepute. So I'll say those again: pain and pleasure, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and disrepute. And basically, these will come with being human. The Buddha himself experienced a lot of pain, a lot of back pain, so much intense pain that sometimes he couldn't give a talk. But these are just, they're not because you're enlightened that these things will come to you. People would badmouth the Buddha, he's just a charlatan, blah, blah, blah. Even though he was an incredibly wise teacher with thousands of followers, people will always, there will be praise and blame. There will be fame and disrepute. People will, this is the greatest in the world, and no, they're yesterday's whatever, and this is what comes with life. We'll have gains and we'll have losses. And the essence of equanimity is to be able to meet these ups and downs, these highs and lows, the pain and the pleasure, the gain and the loss, with this steadiness, with this evenness. And in this sutta, in this discourse, the Buddha, as he often does, he distinguishes between, an everyday person and a follower of the way. He calls the everyday person the uninstructed worldling. Uninstructed worldling. It sounds like something out of The Hobbit, I think. The uninstructed worldling. And then the practitioner, he calls the well-instructed follower of the path. Well-instructed follower. So the uninstructed worldling, the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person, both of these experience pain and loss, pain and pleasure, gain and loss, etc. But the everyday, the uninstructed worldling treats pleasure as, I've got to hold on to that. Please, gain, as I've got to hold on to that. Praise, oh yes, great. I love that. I love praise. I love fame, and then when the loss, oh no, I lost, and the pain, oh why me, and all of this, and there's this clinging and aversion, whereas the instructed follower of the path doesn't get attached, sees pain as pain, pleasure as pleasure, and doesn't get hooked on one, pull one and push the other away. And that's what equanimity is about. And when we cultivate these qualities, these have nowadays, kind of in the current teachings, are spoken about most often as the 8 worldly winds. The 8 worldly winds: pain and pleasure, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. They're the winds of life. These winds will blow, whether we're enlightened or unenlightened, whether we're rich or whether we're poor, the winds will blow. But what makes a difference is if we've trained our heart and mind, we can meet the pain and the pleasure, the gain and the loss, with this steadiness of heart and mind, and we can find peace within all of it, within the highs and the lows. And that is the doorway to freedom. It's not final freedom. We still have to let go. We still have to let go of any remaining clinging. But if we're able to cultivate this quality in a real way. And what I'd like to invite you to do is to just think about the ways in which perhaps you get caught up in, and each one of us gets caught up in different ways, with pain and pleasure, with gain and loss, with praise and blame. What are the things in your life? You don't necessarily have to look at it through these 4 pairs. You could look at it just in more general terms of where do you get caught up in, where do you get tangled? Is it in fear and worry about how things are going to go? Is it in ruminating? Is it in self-judgment? Is it clinging to, food or drink or whatever, to be okay, or looking for something you don't have? What is it in your own life that takes you away from your experience, takes you away from being truly present here and now with whatever is here? And you can reflect on that. Maybe we'll finish with that as just a 1-minute meditation together, just opening to how this teaching of equanimity lands for you, and what does it point to anything in your own life about how you can, how you are maybe perhaps getting caught up in some kind of reactivity or clinging to something? And are there ways in which you can firstly just say yes to what is? Say yes to difficulties when they arise, rather than push them away, or this shouldn't be happening. Just saying yes to what is. That's really a foundation, as we do in the meditation. Can I be with this? And then as a kind of grounding for that, just seeing the impermanence of everything. And if we can see that everything changes, we may be able to get less tied to, oh, I want more of this, I want less of this, and just to be okay with how life is unfolding, moment to moment. I'll share this story that Jack Cornfield shares in his book, The Art of Forgiveness, Loving Kindness and Peace. A Zen story tells that during a time of civil war in Korea, a certain general led his troops through province after province, overrunning whatever stood in his path. The people of one town, knowing that he was coming and having heard tales of his cruelty, all fled into the mountains. The general arrived in the empty town with his troops and sent them out to search the town. Some of the soldiers came back and reported that only one person remained, a Zen priest. The general strode over to the temple, walked in, pulled out his sword and said, "Don't you know who I am? I am the one who can run you through without batting an eye." The Zen master looked back and calmly responded, "And I, sir, am one who can be run through without batting an eye." The general, hearing this, bowed and left. So this is a pointer to equanimity, maybe not exactly where we might feel we are right now, but just having that quality of being able to meet life's joys and sorrows with an even, equal, steady mind. So thank you for your kind attention today.